I just wanted to remember this. Like, I know I'm not good at it. I'm not doing this because I'm good at it. This is a diary. And I don't mind sharing. I don't mind sharing how bad I am at things because maybe someday I'll be good at something and it would be very valuable. It would be very valuable. I, I'm kind of banking on it. I'm banking on that someday I'll do something okay. Um, Maybe even as like a really old man, just before I die. And it would be a valuable lesson because one of the biggest problems in the world, so far as I can see, is like once people give up, like once people are beat, they're beat. You know, I know there's all the stories of getting up again, and people, might get up a couple few times in their lives, but like, what if we could get up like right away, every day, always, right? I can't, you know. And learning that lesson, unfortunately, it's I mean, it's excruciating. It's torturous. And just breaching the subject is torturous. So, even though like I'm a huge fan of like great optimism and like self-empowerment and so on, um, before we're actually empowered, it's it's kind of hell. And it also means what we mean by empowered, right? Anyway, I just wanted to record this. I was trying to get a beat. If I can learn to do more things with my mouth, then I don't need an instrument. No, that's kind of why I'm not trying to piggyback Jack um, Jack Black on this, but um, Bobby McFerrin. I mean, you know, but like the more things you can do with what you have, the less you need. And it's also relating back to the idea of like music as you know music engages both hemispheres of the brain, and like for those who are very very percussive and those who are very tonal, and marrying the right tones with the right percussions, with the you know with the right amplitudes, with the right decibels, with the right durations, with the right tempo, all of it put together. But I guess in some sense, as so far as like the great work goes, being able to use this organ of organs as really an organ, you know. That seems like a very efficient way to utilize what's been given for self actualization. Unfortunately, I'm still kind of too addicted to. I mean, I'm addicted to technology. Major technology. Paper is a major technology. Little leads. I don't use the square, but it's a handy straight edge. Yeah, so I've been working on this. As it turns out, this is geometric, the center image, but then I was like kind of just scratching some stuff out, trying to figure out what I was going to do next time I did some geometry on it, which I haven't done yet. But anyway, accidentally, I really like these little. They look like symbols, but they're not. They're where I didn't have room to draw a full circle, so I drew an ellipse, and was meant to mark out arcs that I wanted to just check out because it seemed like maybe they had something to do with what I'm trying to do with these pictures. Not sure if you can see that. I was hoping it would be an egg. In this picture it looked more like an egg, but oh well. But I was trying to come up with this beat, and I realized that I had to pronounce the consonants in a certain way, otherwise I couldn't make this sound. And it was like pub, kid, put, putaba, pabata, pababata kitiko, pababata, pababata kitiko, bam, pababata kitiko. Oh man, I just recreated beautiful people by accident. Padat, padat, pabataba, pada, padap, padab, pabataba, pabataba, pabata, pabatapa, babatapa, babata kitiko, pabata kitiko, bam, pabata kitiko, bing, pabata kitiko, bom, 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 ging, 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 pabata kitiko, bom. This wasn't what I was doing when I was coming up with it. It was, to my mind, more interesting, but then I had to take a minute to try to figure out the pabataba, padataba, which comes into the idea of like Morse coders. And like thinking that fast where you're like, how many letters per minute can you interpret or decipher? And then what if you put that into visual frame rates? And then what if you're just in a still place, but you Morse code it by your eye movements, but instead of Morse code, instead of one dot or a dash, it's points and lines of like structures that you see as you turn your head. And then how do you convert that? How do you condense that into something? But the thing is it happens intrinsically. It just happens. But the sound, the tone, the percussion, the duration, the chords, I'm half and half on if the nows collapse for today, so I'm gonna give it a second. I'm gonna give it a moment because I'm either gonna erase this video within the next few seconds, or I'm going to keep going. Sometimes I can't imagine why something matters, but sometimes in those or quite often actually, in those very moments, as I go down the line, I finally get to something that's good or great. Though, when I'm making a video of it, it doesn't always look good or great because it really is only that last couple, sometimes seconds, of something quite long is worth seeing, but it's so worth seeing it makes the rest of that shit worth it. And I do mean shit a lot of the time. Turning over stones is messy business. So I'm gonna give it a minute. I'm gonna try to remember. I had some lightning in my mind earlier. Now I'm just like fighting through the debris of the aftermath, you know. But it was very distinct not to go off then and to go now. So I'm going now. Money. That was one thing. Still want to talk about the secret orders of women's over the last, give or take, 10,000 years. That was on my mind some today. The stuff that isn't anywhere. Just about. There's a couple things, but not much. But that will put aside. It was just worth noting because it's gonna come up at some point, and I just hope when the time is right that it's very right and that it reaches the right handful of people. Money, a transparent currency. It will be kind of far off. But things move so fast now. What I would think might come about in 500, 1,000, 1,500 years could potentially come out within 200 years, 250, maybe 150. Just considering how fast everything is condensing upon the breach of a threshold. So it seems like whatever's coming, it won't be 5G, won't be 6G, won't be Tesla, won't even in the long run be Bitcoin or blockchain. But it might be in the short term. Depends what we mean by long and short. 20 years ago seemed like a long time. And even though I'm not sure if I got more than a day or two left, now that I'm in my 40s and have really thought a lot about this, like 1,000 years ago doesn't seem that long ago. Even though if I were deprived of my modern day comforts, I would be a whimpering fool. More so than I already am. Though to my credit, I know I'd get used to it relatively quickly. Once I learned about it in its environment with those who would show me. Presumably my peers. If that was the situation I entered, which it might not be. I might be ridiculed, laughed at, and destroyed. And I don't want to be eaten. Just remember the other thing my mind was lightning about. I had an idea for a game. It's related to a game I've been toying around with in my mind for a lot of years. But yeah, I had an idea for a game. I think it would be a pretty good one. But I gotta develop the rules. To my mind, it would be somewhere in between like Go and the game of life. A little more structure than Go, and less autonomous than the game of life, but somehow something that meets between the two. And John Conway himself, I mean, he's the one who made the free will theorem. Actually, I'm not really sure it can be right, because in the lay, I've been listening to an audiobook on John Conway, and like when he talks about or when his biographer, when it's a coffee table book. But anyway, even in that depiction of his proof of free will, or his proof of the free will theorem, or whatever, his argument for the free will theorem, my understanding is that it incorporates some of the math of quantum physics, and I just got turned on to her recently. I've seen her stuff online before, but I hadn't really listened to her arguments in any detail, and I can't remember her name right now, but I'm sure I'll reference her shortly at some point. But like there's no collapse of the wave function or whatever. And it seems to me that that's something about that is what's being used. Even if roundabout, it would have to still be tied up with whatever that is. I'm assuming maybe it has to do with the Copenhagen interpretation, which in the stuff that I gravitate to tends to harsh on. I don't understand why. But like I understand a little bit of the philosophy of like people who talk about this stuff, who know about it, and then still just talk about it in other ways, and that I kind of gravitate to. So but I don't know. I don't even know if I'm talking about the right thing. Yeah, because that has to do with relativity and not quantum. And they're always confused, even though like the difference between them is the problem. So I just made a major mistake. Wasn't the first of the day. It's pretty late in the day, and it probably ain't the last. And yeah, whoever this woman was, I'm sorry, I forget your name. I'm not familiar with you yet, really. But I saw your one of your videos yesterday, even though I kind of recognized you because I'd kind of gone through some stuff that referenced you. But I had a chance to hear what you had to say. To my mind, it seems like, because you were talking about like, quote unquote regular computers and quantum computers and the difference. And to my mind, I do believe in something more than regular computers, but I don't know. I just don't know about the quantum thing because there's no unified theory. And I don't know a lot. But what I do know is that there is an unequivocal, deeper structure that is more elegant than what's on the table. It's always that way, and that's how it's going to be next time. There's all kinds of difficult, complicated, roundabout ways to get there, but once we're there, it will make more sense. It will inform the imagination, and it will inform the physical world through us, but not only through us. The Renaissance wasn't just a historical event, it was a cosmological event. Things changed. That's not to discount our power within that change, within that feedback loop between us and eternity. It's not to discount that with our power, which is really unique. This is really unique. Our scale is very convenient for the world we live in. There are not large birds of prey who can pick us up. It's railed against how man has so been against nature, and for very good reasons, so I'm not discounting that. But if we were, just imagine for a moment, if we were to revert back to a Kevin Costner Waterworld, I suggest it might even go worse than it went there. Because the ocean is, there's nothing, essentially, that a human being, even remotely like me, as in having walls, a door with a lock on it, if you're like that, then you're enough like me that you would not like the ocean. It's a bad fucking place, There's a reason when people go visit sharks, they go in a cage. I'm just saying. Nothing against sharks if you're watching, which you're not, because you're either swimming or eating. Now's a good time to apologize to the world for the shark within me. Which got me thinking about, well, like it's a shark's a prehistoric animal, like dinosaurs, and they always say like birds are the closest things to dinosaurs. And I think a lot about chickens and turkeys, a lot. And like a turkey or a bird, like, and that has to go back to like free will. And I've seen some of the things that talk about like how God interacts with humanity, as argued by like a really simple argument of game theory. And like the Nash equilibrium between God and the collection of individuals, essentially. And like why God would or would intercede, essentially why God would or wouldn't answer a prayer. And it's pretty simple. Free will, butterfly effect. You pray for something you want that God knows you don't need because God can see through time and see what's going to happen. More than you. If God could see everything that would happen, there wouldn't be free will. But God is like the meteorologist of time. On average, God's going to be better than everybody else. And that's the best God can do because of free will. That's why God is not necessarily perfectly omnipotent, because God cannot God cannot God cannot exceed like certain mathematical principles. God cannot be illogical. We as lesser beings can be illogical. Our free will allows it. And it's logical, or rather, I should say, there's only one state in which it's logical to allow a creator to allow its creation to have free will. It's because the creation's creator has a question that it can't answer. If God knows everything, imagine the size of God's doubt. If God, if the highest principle, if there isn't a God, then in that place where God isn't, this comes right back. It's either I am or I am not. I think, therefore I am. Okay, so you are. Predicated on the fact that you think. Do you? Do I? I am not cancels the game. It's like pressing on off. Now I know a lot of times the power button's the same button, on, off. You press the same button. But it would be like pressing something that's off that was just an on off button. It only does 2 presses. You can never turn it on. It just goes I am not. I'm an accident. I am has to precede the I am not, because I am not will come. I am not comes to everything. The only thing that can protect you from I am not is I am. That's it. There are nuances, of course, all of existence. So, kind of a lot of nuances, all of existence. But I am must precede the I am not. The ocean's worse than my apartment. Don't get me wrong, I have super big respect for like all the like, Nordic diver, polar bear club folk, all that kind of thing. What's it? There's that dude who talked to Jordan Peterson months back. I forget his name. That's the first time I ever saw him. Shit, I forget his name, but he's older than me. Swims beneath the Arctic, Antarctica or whatever. But that's not home. He made his podcast from walls in a place with a door with a lock on it. Just saying. What am I saying? Well, I want to be more like that guy. because that's still like intuition and reason and everything. I want to be all the good parts of me that I am now, plus that guy, plus a whole lot of other shit, but if I could deal with the world that way, that would probably mean that I need less and I could be more comfortable. And well, mostly I want to be more comfortable. And it seems that, and since it seems I'm on a road to less, working on the technology of being more comfortable seems like a strong bet. That seems like a good cause, So. Stupid as a stupid does, right? Gump it down. As many results as possible. With a state of simple joy and well-being. Always doing good. As simply as possible. So that even the dumbest person gets it. And when you have the esteemed privilege of being the stupidest person, one has a unique perspective on the situation. Alright, I'm going to change topics. Money. Yeah, it's just worth noting. Man, this is like the worst video I've ever made, but I'll watch it and I'll remember something I said. It is torturous to watch like an hour of me talking just so I can retrieve one sentence. But that's one of the things about persistence and patience. It's like the rabbit and the hare. Like, in some sense, the hare is like the genius, and the tortoise is like the persistent idiot. In one sense, right? You'd rather be a persistent genius, a patient, kind, loving genius. I'd rather be that, but since I'm not, and since I'm not going to be a genius. It's just not going to happen. So I have to work on patience and persistence, which are my two weakest categories. I'm devilishly impatient. And I'm persistent, but right now I spend more time on the speed bumps than I do on the road. I hit a speed bump and I come to a full stop. And I sit there for a while, traumatized. Then slowly roll over the speed bump. Creep down the road a little bit. Stopping several times on the way, thinking I'm at a speed bump that I'm not at. And I know that's where I'm at. My gratitude is that I'm still going forward. My sadness for myself is that I might not get to where I'm going soon enough. I might not get to the store before it closes if I keep stopping. Because eventually the store's going to close, so to speak. So, and I know that's where I'm at. Yeah, the whole thing, like with transparent money, I've never heard anybody talk about it. But like if it could be encrypted in a different way, or like you're born with a certain amount of money, a certain amount of numbers, and they're all you know, they every unit has its own identity, its own numeric identity, however that is. And it's all completely 100% open. It's so open that you know, like you're born, you're given X amount. And then every year you're given X amount or every whatever, but like you're continually everybody, you know, people are the value. You're given numbers to exchange with, right? But you can also track all of your numbers. So you have a serial number, and that serial number begins with you and dies when you die. So the idea would be that, like, when you die, whoever has, when you die, whoever has any of your money well, the possibility could be that you lose it. The other possibility is that it could remain in circulation. But you should either lose it, like every person's numbers should be unique and it should never, ever, ever, ever change. And then, so there should be like a ledger, and it should be like how many of your own and how many of other people's units you hold. And like you could buy back units. You always had the right to buy your own units back in exchange with some other unit that you held from someone else who held you, but then they'd still have the right to buy back their unit. So you always had a right to your unit. I'm not sure how to encode value to that, but it would create like a second tier stock market of ideas that would be real. My only concern is rule of the mob. But the more sophisticated I'd have to find a way to make it reward morality. But that comes into the whole idea of the transparency, which would be where it gains worth, because anybody involved in the system within the currency, anybody who held currency, would be able to see every single transaction, like every bit of knowable data about everything that has to do with that unit of currency. So it would be like a debt forgiveness note, and it would be like a forgiveness note of people, of like what we do, like acceptance, like not like focusing on, imagine, like it's so fucked up that it's taken me 20 something years to like begin to even conceive of placing value where it belongs. In the general goodness and hopes and wants, and like everybody everybody has such like a pure, beautiful thought and wish and want and prayer and desire inside of them. And we've all been abandoned, and it doesn't really matter what flag, what symbol, there's something so beautiful and tender and loving and wanting and silly and funny and strong and powerful and vibrant, athletic inside all of us. And the philosophy of having to choose. I obviously come down on a side. But what I want for the world is not for people to be like me. I want most of what I have become to become impossible. That's my goal. That's what in what little ways I work, that's what I work for every day. Is that I want the life I've lived to be impossible. As good as it is, or safe, but what I work for isn't like increased safety for me, but in a sense, increase safety and trust in all of us, while at the same time increasing competencies to deal with not being safe, because it's not a safe world. And it's not a safe spiritual cosmos. Once we even begin to dip our toes in. A blind alley is just the start. That's the tip of the iceberg. Right? The cold ocean bottom is far below. But that's where we are. It's what we have to deal with. And that's, we are what we have. We are our greatest resource, okay? Trying to convince myself. I'm trying to convince myself that despite my stupidity in comparison to the many, 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 many betters, I have to remind myself and encourage myself, and motivate myself, and just remind myself that I'm worth it. It's not over yet, and there's still time to contribute. Whether that just means holding the torch for a moment, or carrying it a long way.